Welcome to Carol and Gary's See America Tour. Hello everyone, today is still October 13th, 2018. After uploading the last video, Carol, Jasper, and I drove 125 miles from Santa Rosa, New Mexico to Roswell, New Mexico. There are two ways to get to Roswell from Santa Rosa. Apparently we took the wrong way. Highway 20 is 46 miles long. All of it is posted at 55 miles an hour. Most of it has no shoulder. During this 46 miles, we met two vehicles going the other way and one person passed us. With no shoulder and almost no traffic, I decided to straddle the center line and try to drive 55 miles an hour. Roswell is famous for its connection to alien activity. Just before midnight on Wednesday, July 2nd, 1947, Mac Brazel, a rancher on the Foster Sheep Ranch 75 miles northwest of Roswell, heard a loud noise. At approximately the same time, two nuns at St. Mary's Hospital in Roswell saw a slow red light descend to the northwest of Roswell. On Thursday, July 3rd, 1947, Mac Brazel discovered a huge debris field of strange-looking material. It was 300 feet wide and 3/4 of a mile long. On Sunday, July 6, 1947, Mac Brazel took two cardboard boxes filled with pieces of the strange-looking debris to the sheriff in Roswell. The sheriff called Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer at nearby Roswell Army Air Force Base. Jesse Marcel drove to the sheriff's office that afternoon to investigate. On Monday, July 7, 1947, Mac Brazel escorted Jesse Marcel and Captain Sheridan Cavett, the head of the Army Counterintelligence Department, to investigate the debris field on the ranch. That same afternoon, Glenn Davis, a mortician at Ballard Funeral Home in Roswell, received a call from somebody at the Army Air Base asking about the number of child-sized caskets that he had in stock. He received more calls about how to preserve bodies that had been exposed to the weather. Later that afternoon, Glenn had to deliver a body to the base hospital and saw strange stuff in the back of ambulances. Glenn went into the hospital and happened to see a friend of his who was a nurse. When she saw him, she told him to get out of there immediately. He was then escorted out of the hospital by military police with threats to his life. On Tuesday, July 8, 1947, the Army Air Force Base commander told his public relations officer to issue a press release about the recovery of a crashed flying saucer on the ranch. This information was put on the Associated Press wire. The military's plan was to inform the public that the craft was not there anymore so that the public would not attempt to explore the crash site. That same afternoon, Jesse Marcel took some of the debris to an Army general in Fort Worth. The general then tells Jesse to step out of the room. When he returns to the room, he sees that the debris has been replaced by a weather balloon. The general orders Jesse to pose for two pictures with the substituted balloon. Glenn Dennis met the nurse he had seen at the base for coffee. She drew pictures of the bodies that she had seen at the base hospital. That evening, Pappy Henderson, an Army Air Force pilot, flies the bodies that he saw from the Army Air Force Base in Roswell to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. Wednesday, July 9, 1947, the Associated Press reports the recovery of a weather balloon. During the period of July 9th to July 12th, Mac Brazel was held by the military so that they could inspire him to modify his story to that of a crashed weather balloon. Mark Brazel died remaining silent on this event, except for one cryptic remark: "They weren't green." Outside the Alien Museum, numerous stores up and down Main Street were selling alien t-shirts, sweatshirts, and other alien-related souvenirs. On July 4th every year, the town celebrates its alien connection with a parade that includes spaceships and people dressed like aliens. On Monday, October 15th, Carol, Jasper, and I drove 68 miles to Carlsbad, New Mexico. On Tuesday, October 16th, Carol and I drove 28 miles from our campground in Carlsbad to Carlsbad Cavern National Park. Jim White, a 16-year-old cowboy, has been credited with the first exploration of the caverns in 1898. Carlsbad Cavern became a national park in 1930. The main area of Carlsbad Cavern is a cavern known as the Big Room. It is the largest known natural limestone chamber in the Western Hemisphere. The cavern is 600,000 square feet, an area equal to 14 football fields, and is located 800 feet below ground. There are two entrances to the cavern. The natural entrance route is a self-guided 1¼ mile tour following the traditional explorer's route, entering the cavern through the large historic natural entrance. The natural entrance descends over 750 feet, following steep and narrow trails through a tall, spacious trunk passage called the main corridor. Carol and I decided to take the elevator down to an area where the natural entrance route meets up in the big room. When we came out of the elevator, we were near the red dot on the lower right corner of this map. The 1¼ mile self-guided big room tour follows a relatively flat cement sidewalk with handrails around the perimeter of the big room. The complete tour around the big room took approximately 2 hours. Although the big room was lit well enough to see with our eyes, many pictures did not come out, but here are a few that show a little of what we saw. This is an area where ripples in the water cause the minerals in the water to be deposited at the bottom of the pool, forming tiny walls. This wire ladder was installed in 1924 during a 6-month exploration and survey sponsored by the National Geographic Society. On Wednesday, October 17th, with one day left in Carlsbad, Carol and I decided to drive back out to Carlsbad Caverns to see the natural entrance to the cavern. I read about Jim White last evening, the 16-year-old cowboy who was out looking for stray cattle with a fence mending crew in 1898 when he saw a dark cloud of something resembling smoke rising from the land ahead of him. Fearing that it might be a fire, Jim tied his horse to a nearby tree and worked his way through the brush to the edge of a large opening in the ground where thousands of bats were flying out. This is the opening that Jim found that day. It is known as the natural entrance. After seeing this large opening and other people starting down the switchback walkway for the 1.25 miles to the big room that we saw yesterday, Carol decided that she wanted to walk this route to the cavern too. Since I have a senior pass that lets us into all national parks free, I walked back up the sidewalk to the ticket area and asked for 2 more tickets. The walk into the natural entrance was not as well lit as the big room was yesterday, and the path, while rough non-skid cement, was much steeper. I took this picture looking back at the entrance as we worked our way into the cavern, but with less light. Most of the other pictures didn't come out again today. Here are a few that are light enough to show you. After reaching the big room, it was a short walk to the elevator to take us back up to the surface. Here are some pictures of the canyon walls that we passed through on our way back to the town of Carlsbad. Carol and I have been on 2 guided cave tours, but neither compares to Carlsbad Caverns. Maybe because Carlsbad was self-guided and we were able to take our time rather than trying to keep up with a tour guide. But when you first walk into the big room, if you came down the elevator, or seeing the first massive opening if you entered through this natural entrance, you can't help but be awestruck. Carlsbad Cavern is another stop that you have to put on your bucket list. On Thursday, October 18th, Carol, Jasper, and I traveled 214 miles in a light rain from Carlsbad, New Mexico to Las Cruces, New Mexico. There were signs early on our route warning of steep hills ahead with a 6% incline. Here's a topographical map of part of our route. Notice the dark green color. This is actually the southern end of the Sacramento Mountains. In Cloudcroft, New Mexico, with an elevation of 8,668 feet, we saw a sign pointing toward a ski lodge. Highway 82 was a little hairy going down the west side, especially in the rain. There were several 30-mile-per-hour turns and at least 2 truck pullouts, which are used to stop a runaway truck. But it was too warm to be icy, so I carefully worked my way down the side of the mountain, and then on to Las Cruces. On Friday, October 19th, with only 1 day in Las Cruces, Carol and I decided to go and see the Dripping Springs Falls, approximately 10 miles from Las Cruces. Dripping Springs Falls is an intermittent waterfall depending on the time of the year and the amount of rain that has fallen recently. On the way to Dripping Spring Falls, we saw where heavy rain had washed sand and small rocks across the road, going into the canyon where the falls were located. We parked in a designated parking area approximately 1.5 miles from the falls and walked up a beautiful canyon lined with cactus and desert vegetation. Fog still covered much of the hills above us. And here is Dripping Spring Falls. Carol took this picture on her phone. And here is a video of each section separately. There seemed to be underground plumbing between the 2 sections because there is no pool on the top section, and yet it flows freely out the bottom. There were also the ruins of an old mountain camp near the waterfall, built in the 1870s. On the way back to our motorhome, we saw two men climbing the side of a rock mound. Luckily, they were using a rope for safety. Well, that does it for New Mexico. New Mexico is the 20th state that Carol and I have visited together. We will be leaving tomorrow morning for 12 days in Tucson, Arizona. If you like this video but have not yet subscribed, please do so to be notified of future videos, and feel free to share with your friends. Thanks for watching.